Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to what we like to call Lunch with Books. You're free to bring a lunch. We do not serve one. This has been a point of contention over the years, but we do have pretzels and free beverages. But the pretzels are gone, as my colleague reminds me. So we'll make sure we have extra pretzels in the future. If you would like a copy of the new Upper Ohio Valley Historical Review, it is $8. You can buy it from me, or you can buy it at the circ desk upstairs. If you're not on our email list, the box is over there. Fill out one of our forms and get on the email list so you can be updated about our programs. Next Tuesday, well, actually this Thursday, if you're in the basket weaving, which is a full class, we will conclude that at 4 p.m., and there's a class at 7 p.m., making baskets. Next Tuesday, on the 19th, the Bridges of West Virginia with our friend Gene Finstein, on the occasion of the 175th anniversary of our bridge, the suspension bridge. Yeah, 175 years. And next Thursday, we have a special program at noon on the 21st in conjunction with the Ogilvy Museum, which has an exhibit about harness racing. A gentleman named Pop Gears, who was killed on Wheeling Island 100 years ago, but he was a celebrity in his day of harness racing. So that'll be on Thursday. And the following Tuesday, Alana Roberts, who is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh, her book is called I've Been Here All the While, Black Freedom on Native Land. So it's about the cultural interaction of African Americans and Native Americans. Our guest today was just here for our Halloween program. And her name is Laura Jackson. She is an environmental writer, a humorist, and a native of Wheeling. Her work has appeared in places like Terrain.org, Brevity, Hippocampus, and Still. And she has been listed as notable in Best American Essays. This collection she is going to read from today is called Deep and Wild, On Mountains, Opossums, and Finding Your Way in West Virginia. And it was released in October. Please welcome back Laura Jackson.
Thank you, Sean. And thanks, everybody, for coming out to lunch with empty pretzel bowls. I'm going to read to you from my book today, but first I'll just give you a little bit of background on me. I recognize most of you, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Laura Jackson. I am a Wheeling native, and I'm probably the 6th or 7th or 8th generation of Jacksons in Wheeling. I've lost track. But I grew up in Dimmydale, and my first writing teacher was in 4th grade at Wheeling Country Day School, Cassie Edwards. And I went to Lindsley, and after Lindsley, I decided I'd had enough of West Virginia, and I went to Florida. And I went to Eckerd College and got a degree in environmental science. And I was going to be a scientist, and didn't think about writing once. And then life happened, as life happens, and I found myself after college back in Wheeling for just a few months, and that was 20-some years ago. It happens, right? So I had some kids, and I did the stay-at-home mom thing for a while, and then I kind of found myself moldering and aimless, and it was at that point that I saw an ad for Chatham University's Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing in Pittsburgh, and it was a degree that I could obtain from home. And I hadn't even thought about writing in years, but for some reason when that advertisement popped up on my social media feed, it must have been fate, because I saw it and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I meant to do. So I applied. I didn't look at any other schools. I applied, and the next thing I knew, I was getting a master's in creative writing. at the same school where Rachel Carson, who wrote Silent Spring, attended many, many, many years ago. And then while I was finishing up my master's degree, I started doing some freelance writing around Wheeling. I wrote for Ogilvy Institute. I found my way to Wheelunk, which at the time was managed and edited by the incredible Phyllis Siegel, who gave me the freedom to write about whatever I wanted in the whole world, which is a pretty rare thing for an editor to give you carte blanche to write whatever you want. But I wrote about hellbenders, and I wrote about water quality, and I wrote about all the critters. And that in turn led to writing for Wonderful West Virginia Magazine and West Virginia Living, which in turn led to my job as a science writer for West Virginia University, where I interview scientists, astrophysicists, and foresters, and biologists, and take their research and translate it into language that the average reader can understand. So I'm genuinely engulfed in the world of science writing. But while all this was going on, I started writing this book, and I didn't know I was writing a book at the time. I think that's the case for a lot of writers. But as my kids got older, we traveled more in West Virginia, and I spent my whole childhood in the woods thanks to my dad. And I started chucking my own kids into the woods, and we started accruing all these amazing adventures, and I started having these thoughts about what it's like to be a West Virginian and what it's like to experience West Virginia, and the contrast between being a West Virginian on the inside and what it looks like to be a West Virginian from the outside. So that leads me to the 3 reasons why I wrote this book. And it started coming together during the pandemic when I was anxious and scared and had nothing to do but go into the woods and ponder these questions. But first of all, I wrote it for us. I wrote it for West Virginians because it's a love letter, and we know why we're here in West Virginia. We know why we love it here. We know the special and amazing places like Canaan Valley and the New River Gorge and Seneca Rocks and Blackwater Falls, all these amazing places that most people don't know about. But in addition to that, we understand that West Virginia has this sort of magnetic hold on us. And even those who leave West Virginia and never come back, they always, if they come for a visit, they stop at the border and they take a picture of the sign that says, "Welcome to wild, wonderful West Virginia." And they'll put it on social media with a hashtag that says, "Country roads take me home," or something. So, and then they go straight to DeCarlo's when they get home, of course. But we know why this place is special, and so many of us leave and come back, and so many don't come back too, but you can't quite ever sever that tie with West Virginia. Even if it's a place that you resent or you feel angry about, there's still this sort of dichotomous feeling in most of us where maybe we don't want to go home, but it's still home, and it's a tough connection to sever. Secondly, I wrote it because West Virginia is a fishbowl. That's how I've come to think of it. We know all these things that I've just mentioned. We know why we're here. Not everybody else understands why we're here. They know that it's a place of addiction and poverty and hillbillies and coal mining, but it's more than that. And we know it's more than that, but it's difficult to explain that to other people. Because first you have to get past the whole, "Do you know my cousin in Richmond" thing. So anyway, I wanted to show the rest of the world what it's like to be a West Virginian, especially now. You know, there's an awful lot of literature about West Virginia in the past and all the amazing people who have grown up in adversity and struggled and made it and either escaped or come back and survived. But this is more about what it's like to be a West Virginian on the average day, and especially one who's ecologically minded. And that's the 3rd reason why I wrote Deep and Wild. It's because I'm an environmental writer, and nature's in my heart and my soul. And like so many of you, I would imagine the mountains here they're in our DNA, they're in our bones. And we have plenty of ecological challenges here in West Virginia. And I wanted to bring not only attention to them, but to do so in a non-traditional way. So I'm sure that by now we all know that we have some problems ecologically, climatologically, however you want to look at it, we've got some uphill battles. And it's very overwhelming. And I don't know how many times I can read about the poached elephants or the last white rhino or the clubbed baby seals without thinking, oh my God, just pass me the Oreos and I'm gonna sit in a hole for the next 3 weeks. It's really depressing and it's really difficult. And even as an environmental writer, I'm tired of delivering by anxiety and sorrow and the ecology in West Virginia and scarring longer. So, because I have science and laughter and I want readers. So with that said, is from an essay called Being West Virginian. And I think we can probably all relate to this. For every person I've met in the world who truly knows West Virginia, there are 2 more who have nothing to go on beyond a comedic portrayal. These classic caricatures are outdated to the point of absurdity, yet they persist, perhaps because stereotypes are born from a seed of truth. Without a doubt, somebody here has flattened a critter with their Chevy and fried it in a pan. You're more likely to find a 4-wheeler than a Wi-Fi router in a few counties. And somewhere in the far corners of Roane County, a shotgun-wielding grandma just dropped a 10-point buck from the window beside her kitchen tub. Many West Virginians own this with pride, while others feel conflicted and try to both excuse and explain us to the rest of the country, to prove our worth. We're compelled by some odd mix of shame and pride to not only claim this land as our home, but also to justify why we've chosen to be of this place. West Virginia is inconsistency, its beauty and misery. It's easy to mistake their rounded curves for mildness. It's easy to mistake their rounded curves for mildness, to rank them low on the list of impressive ranges far beneath the Sierra or Rockies. But West Virginia has seen things the jagged peaks of the West can only imagine in their infant dreams. When you travel through our mountains, they wipe clean the notions you've accumulated about banjos and bathtubs. It's a landscape of age and wisdom, of contentment. We know that quiet intensity. It's woven through us like the tendrils of an ancient nervous system. My God, we love this land. We're not shy about showing it either. I've never seen state pride on display more than it is here. Go to the store and you're guaranteed to see someone wearing a cap with West Virginia University's famous flying WV logo. Somebody's got one. Somebody's got one. Aha, yep. Someone with a Monongahela National Forest sticker on their car, or a jacket with the state's distinctive profile emblazoned on the fabric. You'll see West Virginia tattoos, WVU bandanas, and kitschy tees depicting something unique and distinctly West Virginian, like a pepperoni roll or a giant hellbender salamander. These trappings express our love for this place, but when we're out of state, they're also a bright, shining beacon. It's how we find other West Virginians in the world, even if they're expats. We'll be drawn to each other like magnetic north, outed by our ball caps or t-shirts or license plates. We'll put aside whatever we're doing or wherever we're going for a moment and stand in the Old Faithful parking lot in Yellowstone or on the beach in the Galapagos Islands and talk about home. Where are you from? Upshur County. Where are you from? Hampshire County. My brother's in Hampshire County. Is that right? My brother's in Wyoming County. I went to a church retreat in Wyoming County last spring. Really? My daughter's a preacher in Pocahontas County. Oh, I love Pocahontas County. With 55 counties, this can go on for a while. But our county of residence is how we identify ourselves. 2/3 of West Virginians live in a rural area. Monroe County still has no traffic lights. Some unincorporated communities are little more than an intersection and a gas station. So while almost nobody knows Smoot, West Virginia, except for the Smootians, everybody knows Greenbrier County. Geographic generalizations work for us. The irony of meeting a familiar face far from home is that while we're so excited to be out of state and seeing something new, the sight of another West Virginian strikes the sweetest note. We've found someone in this wide world who understands what we're so unable to convey to the residents of the other 49 states. We don't have to explain, yes, we're from West Virginia. And yes, we have all our teeth and running water. And no, we aren't coal miners, but yes, we know plenty. And yes, it is a beautiful state. We meet each other and grasp hands and find suddenly more joy in our bond than we do in the vacation we took to get away from the place that connects us. It's comforting to encounter our own because when we meet people from other places, there's a checklist of corrections we have to run through regarding our existence, and the primary topic is often geography. The conversations, vastly different from the ones we have with our mountain state brethren, inevitably go like this. Where are you from? Arizona. You? West Virginia. West Virginia? Hey, I have a cousin in Richmond. James Leonard, sells insurance. You know him? It's always Richmond. I don't know what it is about Richmond, Virginia that is attracting your cousins, but it must really be something if they've all decided to settle there. At this point in the conversation, the West Virginian has two choices. If we're young and proud, we'll try to educate the new acquaintance on the intricacies of geography. Richmond is about 200 miles from the West Virginia border. And the Civil War. We may do it sincerely or sarcastically, depending on how many times we've had this conversation. Actually, I don't know if you've heard, but West Virginia seceded from Virginia a while ago. It was kind of a big deal. There was a war. Even worse, some people call us Western Virginia, like we're some scrawny limb that wasn't amputated all the way and is now just hanging out there waving people through Monroe County intersections because there aren't any red lights. Older West Virginians will have heard the cousin in Richmond quip many times. With age comes wisdom and patience, so their response will usually be, yes, Richmond is lovely, or how nice for your cousin. They've lived a life of being misunderstood and misrepresented. They've seen maps on TV that leave West Virginia off entirely because some graphic designer failed third-grade geography. There on the screen is Ohio, snuggled up to Pennsylvania and Virginia. I saw a 50-state ice cube tray for sale on Amazon. Well, 49 states, because West Virginia was gone, wiped from existence. We're a uniquely shaped state. Hard to forget, you'd think, but it happens a lot. However, as we age, these mistakes cease to surprise us, and the blessing of this land is that it teaches us to flow rather than fight. We can only change the perception of our state one ice cube tray at a time. We work hard at that. Over the years, I've introduced many out-of-staters to West Virginia's beauty and history, but it hasn't always been a smooth process. Some people are more open-minded than others, and I learned this when I went to college in St. Petersburg, Florida. My college boyfriend made West Virginia jokes a religion. A New Yorker by birth, he knew West Virginia as little more than a collection of stereotypes and took enormous pleasure in teasing me. He joked about missing teeth and kissing cousins, and often wondered how many tractors he might see on the interstate if he visited me. I spent our 2-year relationship trying to prove I was as competent as any New Yorker, but never succeeded. He and I had many adventures. One notable afternoon, we hopped in my car with my roommate and headed east into the interior of Florida, where every spring, Plant City hosts the annual Florida Strawberry Festival. In West Virginia, we celebrate the Buckwheat Festival, the Ramp Festival, the Rail Festival, the Ramp and Rail Festival, the Mothman Festival, Trout Fest, Carp Fest, and indeed the Roadkill Cook-Off, to name but a few. Plant City's yearly event focuses on strawberries in any form, be it jam, jelly, shortcake, ice cream, or bread. You'll also find the stomach-churning rides that spin around in a circle and occasionally toss riders like fructose-infused hacky sacks. As we filtered out of Tampa and St. Pete and turned east toward Plant City, the traffic thinned. I set the cruise control and settled back into my seat. Behind me, someone blared their horn. I jumped. It wasn't a long, angry note, but a manic series of honks. Beep, 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 beep. Jesus, my boyfriend said. I peered into the rearview mirror. Yeah, I said, what the hell? The honking from behind escalated into a solid, frenzied howl as the driver closed the distance between us at an alarming speed. This guy is psychotic, I said. I'm getting over. I shifted into the slow lane to let the lunatic pass me. I hoped he'd zip by and vanish into the eastern horizon, but as the vehicle, an old beater of a truck with peeling paint and mismatched tires, approached mine, the driver let off the gas to maintain an even pace with me. 2 young men in faded ball caps sat in the cab, and as they pulled up beside my car, they began to holler and scream at me. The guy on the passenger side leaned his entire torso out the window, but his expression wasn't furious. It was exultant. You know where this is going, don't you? "Hey," he shouted, "hey, woo!" The driver, too, grinned at me with an expression of recognition. His whole arm waggled back and forth in a hysterical wave. I gave them a look I hoped would both acknowledge their presence and discourage them from any further contact, and slowed down to let them speed by to whatever crackpot convention they were attending. "That's creepy," my roommate said. "They look like they just crawled out of the woods," my boyfriend said. As the truck accelerated, the man in the passenger seat tucked his body back into the cab with a final wave. "Idiots like that have no business behind the wheel of a 3,000-pound machine," I said. And then, as those idiots pulled away, I saw their license plate, accented with blue and gold. I saw the phrase print along its bottom: "Wild, wonderful, West Virginia." Like magnetic north, my people had found me and were obligated not only to acknowledge our sameness in a faraway place, but also to reach out, to literally reach out. The guy had nearly eaten pavement to grab my attention. I held my breath, waiting for my passengers to see what I'd seen. And when they did, my boyfriend's laugh exploded out of his chest. He cackled until he bit his lip, and for the rest of our relationship, he returned again and again to that moment to argue for the truth in West Virginia's stereotypes. No matter how many brilliant West Virginians he might meet, those two friendly, simple souls would always fit precisely into the hillbilly trope he was so fond of. My cheeks flushed at his state shaming, and I had been mortified by those men's behavior on such a dangerous road. But that license plate, speeding away, was indeed a beacon. I didn't admit it, but it brought me more joy than any strawberry could. There was no way to explain to my friends the connection I had with those odd but merry travelers in the truck, and I never bothered to. West Virginia had come to find me. 2 decades later, I took a workshop with the writer, Paul Hurtnecki, author of Rust Belt Boy. He writes about food and travel and growing up in a Pittsburgh mill town. My home state came up again and again in my writing prompts. You could write about West Virginia, Paul mused, but you have to figure out what West Virginia is really good at, something no other state can claim. I sat with that statement overnight. I sat with it for a week, for a year. And every time I came up with a piece or a place that made my heart sing, I realized another state was doing it better. Colorado has taller mountains. Arizona has a deeper canyon. Utah has better snow, and Vermont more fall color. The more I write about West Virginia, the more I think about Paul's query. I've yet to reach an answer on exactly what it is we do so well here, what we can claim as our own. I can feel it, of course. We all can. But the words get lost in the translation from emotion to paragraph. What I return to again and again is the green earth that rises above us and the water that carves its way down. West Virginia's greatest assets are its deep and wild places, those left behind and off the map. This place is old. With age comes contentment. With contentment comes peace. What West Virginia does best, it's been doing for eons, waiting quietly, wearing down, wrapping rough places in forest and smoothing them with stream. When I'm lacking words, I turn to those whose works have meant so much to me. Brees D.J. Pancake was a West Virginia writer known only for a thin volume of stories published after his suicide in 1979. He would have rocked the literary world and his home state had he lived. Kurt Vonnegut said Pancake was the best and most sincere writer he had ever read. Joyce Carol Oates compared his extraordinary gifts to Hemingway's. Pancake wove rural hardship and environmental degradation together with the unique sense of place felt so strongly by Appalachians. It's a sense that's hard to convey to those who don't feel it. Perhaps that's why, when I can't find the words I'm looking for, I turn to Brees D.J. Pancake, who found them. "I'm going to come back to West Virginia when this is over," he wrote to his mother from Charlottesville before he died. "There's something ancient and deeply rooted in my soul. I like to think that I have left my ghost up one of those hollows, and I'll never really be able to leave for good until I find it. and I don't want to look for it because I might find it and have to leave. We can drift away from this place, but the strongest roots go deep. If Pancake's ghost still haunts the hollows, it's not alone. We're forever attached. It's what it means to be West Virginian. Thank you. So now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about bugs. Let's see, how much time do we have? Okay. This is called Blink, Chirp, Buzz, a West Virginia invertebrate index. We don't call the bugs with the glowing butts fireflies in West Virginia. We call them lightning bugs. When I was young, the neighbor kids and I waited for them each evening under humid purple skies, the June grass soft on our bare feet. The first tentative lights winked on in the blooming peonies, and as the darkness descended, a bioluminescent symphony overtook the yard. We caught them, studied them, and released them. For injured individuals with a misshapen wing or a broken antenna, we created Lightning Bug Regional Hospital, a level 1 trauma center and skilled rehab facility. Managed by 4 7-year-olds, routine insect care consisted of petting them and offering a pep talk. It's okay, lightning bug. I'll squeeze you tight and love you until you're all better. Let's practice flying. Try to take off. Oh, you fell. Our success rate with lightning bug rehab was depressingly low. It's hard to imagine how a fumbling set of fingers and a heart full of obsessive love could possibly go wrong. But somehow the more we caught, the more patients had to be admitted to our facility, which really should have been called Lightning Bug Memorial Hospital. Eventually, the CEO, my dad, stepped in and shut us down, something about ethical violations. Researchers believe that lightning bugs developed their ability to light up as a warning. The bioluminescent chemical reaction signals their distastefulness to predators. Over time, however, it also became a way to attract a mate. Females sit on the ground and watch the flying male's flashes. When they see a display they like, the brighter and flashier the better, the females signal in return, and a match is made. But it's not always that simple. Though the annual lightning bug dating event appears sweet and joyful to us, down on the ground, there's drama playing out between 2 genera, Photinus and Photurus. Think Romulus and Remus, but without the hills or the cities or the complicated mythology. Also, they're beetles. As the Photinus males fly around and signal for mates, predatory Photurus females lurk in the grass and assume a false identity to lure the Photinus males in. Photurus females have learned to mimic the flashing patterns of Photinus females. It's firefly catfishing. Just when an eager Photinus fellow thinks he's found his soulmate, she tackles him and devours him. They do this to absorb defensive compounds, the kind that make them taste terrible to a predator, from Photinus for their own protection, and can pass the beneficial toxin on to their offspring. Scientists call the Photurus females femme fatale fireflies. In response, some Photinus males have caught on and are developing their own bioluminescent tricks to counter the female's deception. A male may flash a different, unrecognizable pattern, or, in an all too familiar move, simply hit the road when he realizes he's not going to get lucky. Despite their tough side, lightning bug populations are diminishing around the world. Ecologists attribute this decline to habitat destruction. Firefly larvae grow in moist and humid places like rotting wood, forest litter, and along bodies of water like ponds and marshes. As we continue to develop forested lands and wetlands, we're paving over their nurseries. Lawn pesticides and chemicals kill firefly larvae. In addition, the brighter we make our world at night, the harder it is for them to reproduce. Artificial lights blind them and throw their flashes out of sync. It helps to turn off garden and landscaping lights at night and draw the drapes after dark. This is good practice anyway because, quite frankly, we're all sick of watching you eat raw cookie dough in your underwear at 11 o'clock at night. Lightning bugs don't stay long. They're here and gone in a month, but West Virginia has no shortage of personal invertebrates, and whether you seek them out or not, they'll likely find you. A cricket found me once, and he stayed in my car for 9 days. I don't know how he got in there, but he hid beneath my seats, calling for a lady friend who would never appear. At first, I thought I was suffering from tinnitus. I laughed when I realized it was a cricket. They're supposed to be good luck, a signal of forthcoming wealth and prosperity. Who wouldn't want a bit of fortune riding along on the highway? I tried to find him, but crickets are tiny and evasive, and they shut up the minute you get close. I searched for 20 minutes, bashed my knee, wrenched my neck, and gave up. I figured he'd escape or expire. He did neither. You'd think he might have stopped singing after a few days, but he hopped around the vehicle and continued to croon, a technique known as stridulation, accomplished by rubbing two specialized wings together from the tops of the headrests and the depths of the storage compartments. And I had the privilege of hearing him every day. Grocery store, chirp. School drop-off, chirp. Bank, chirp, chirp. He said nothing when my husband and kids were in the car. I told them about him, that I couldn't catch him, that it was not quite as funny as it had been at first. They nodded politely, and at one point my husband said, "Do you hear the cricket now, Laura?" Thus, the problem grew from an insect-in-car issue to a sweeping concern for mom's well-being, which was ridiculous, but on day 8, I thought about driving through the car wash with open windows to flush him out. By day 10, he went silent, having either escaped or died at his post. To this day, I'm not sure my family believes it really happened. Probably because it wasn't my first cricket incident. A year prior, a doctor had prescribed a drug for fibromyalgia, a non-opioid painkiller. It soothed the chronic pain that drives some folks to actual opioids. I was thrilled when, on the 3rd day, I woke up without a neck ache or stiffness. The crickets began chirping in my head on the 5th day. At first, I only heard them during quiet moments, like when I lay down in bed. One cricket joined another, and they chirped in unison. The chorus grew louder and more unified until they surrounded me in a constant, pulsating whine of insect song. I heard it over the TV and dinner conversations. I heard it in the shower. I checked the drug's potential side effects on the website. It listed drowsiness, dizziness, dry mouth, constipation, difficulty concentrating, and weight gain. It did not, however, mention crickets. Not that I expected crickets per se to be listed, but if it had said something like drowsiness, dizziness, dry mouth, bullfrogs, constipation, bugling elk, difficulty concentrating, humpback whale song, and weight gain, at least I would have known my auditory hallucinations were in the right taxonomic kingdom. As it was, I was left to wonder if it was real or not. When you hear something that you're pretty sure exists only in your head, you face a moment of uncertainty and inevitably self-consciousness. It's a big risk to look around the room and ask the other parties if they hear that noise, because you know there's a solid chance they'll look at you with expressions that wander from confusion, what noise, to recognition, oh, she's hearing things again, and eventually settle on pity. She's been like this ever since she fell off that golf cart, poor thing. Then again, if you don't ask the room if they hear that noise, and it turns out they do hear it, but are also too self-conscious to ask, then nobody acknowledges the fact that the carbon monoxide detector has been going off for half an hour. So ultimately, it's better to ask the people around you if they hear the crickets too. My family didn't hear them, but they did give me a withering look, patted me on the head. I stopped taking the medication. The pain came right back, and it took 4 months for the chirping to stop. A year later, when that real cricket checked into my Nissan for an extended stay, they got the same looks on their faces. "Hey, Dad, Mom says the crickets are back." "Oh, God, here we go again," he said. "Laura, there are no crickets." "Cricket," I said. "There's a cricket. One." "You're taking that prescription again, aren't you?" I'm hardly the first to deal with a cricket in an inconvenient spot. I know people who've accidentally released crickets meant for their pet lizard into their homes, which makes my single cricket seem pretty benign compared to an orchestra of them in the living room. That's the technical term. You'd think it might be an irritation of crickets, or a shut the fuck up of crickets. No, it's orchestra. Historically, of course, the most dreaded insects do arrive in swarms. In biblical times, short-horned grasshoppers, aka the plague of locusts, blew in on the hand of God and ate their way through Egypt. Unfortunately, it wasn't the last locust plague, and while we don't really know where God stands on the issue, current evidence points to climate change as a likely contributor to modern invasions. In the eastern US, one of the most notorious insect invasions is that of the periodical cicada. West Virginians tend to call them 17-year locusts. It's a misnomer because while crickets and grasshoppers belong to the order Orthoptera, cicadas are hemipterans, the true bugs. They're known for their remarkable life cycles. They spend 13 or 17 years underground, depending on the species, before emerging in one giant mass, we remember this, to molt, breed, and die. Cicadas have no defense other than to rise from the ground in phenomenal numbers, sometimes more than 1.5 million individuals in a single acre. And since no predator is that gluttonous, many survive. Researchers believe that because 13 and 17 are prime numbers, predators cannot synchronize their generations with the cicada's emergence, and possibly that the 15 separate broods are also prevented from hybridizing. Different broods emerge in their home territories at different times. Brood 5 emerged in the northern panhandle of West Virginia in 1982, 1999, and 2016. I was 3 in the summer of '82, so I don't remember any of it, and I didn't come home from college when they returned in June of '99. By 2016, I'd been hearing their stories for 37 years, how they waited quietly underground for almost 2 decades, emerged in unfathomable numbers, and sang in a deafening 100 decibel chorus. They flew everywhere, people warned me. They clung to shirts and hair. They sang all day, every day for 6 weeks, and it wasn't the gentle rhythmic whir that rises and falls when the annual August Dog Day cicadas sing. It was an ongoing shriek that made sitting outside miserable. I love nature in whatever form it presents itself, but this talk started to worry me as their emergence neared. Every day, 6-year-old Benjamin and I lifted our garden pavers and watched the nymphs meander through the shallow tunnels in the top layer of soil. The weather warmed, the weather cooled. Just when I thought they might appear, they didn't. It was like being in the dentist chair waiting for a root canal. You hear the dentist milling around as he prepares for the procedure, and you sort of want him to come in and get it over with, and you sort of want him to fall down a mine shaft. Ultimately, it was the cicada movie that thawed my heart. Filmmaker Samuel Orr, known for his skill with time-lapse photography, had put together a crowdfunding campaign a few years prior to support his documentary on the periodical cicadas called Return of the Cicadas. And the preview was online, still generating interest. He included full moon shots and extreme close-ups that somehow made the insects' bizarre 5-eyed faces and crunchy bodies look vaguely canine. For some viewers, the cicadas lost the ick factor and became a moving and powerful example of the miracles of nature and evolution. And while some insect haters never warmed up to the cicadas or had stumbled upon a recipe for thawing the human heart, violins, his score was packed with them. As the cicadas climbed into the trees and transformed from nymph to winged adult, the strings swelled, and I teared up. When he zoomed in on the individuals with deformed wings, the ones who had no chance of survival, I blubbered. By the time they all died at the end of their short lives, I'd wiped my nose on my sleeve and eaten half a Whitman sampler to get through the emotional ordeal. My anxiety melted, and when they finally poured out of the ground in May, I rejoiced. As Orr wrote, it was one of the greatest insect outbreaks on Earth. The cicadas fascinated my kids. We sat outside and watched them crawl up the trees, shed their exoskeletons, and unfurl their paper-thin wings. The boys played gently with the new adults, placing them on matchbox cars and in the co-pilot seat of the Millennium Falcon next to Chewie. They wore the cicadas on their ears and noses, and the cicadas, exhausted from metamorphosis and the first day of the end of their lives, obliged. For all the bugs knew, this was it, the climax of their existence. And if they were disappointed that they'd crawled around in the dirt for 17 years, survived rodents and dog pee, and grew a sexy body for the beady-eyed ladies, only to find themselves dangling from a 6-year-old's left nostril, they were polite enough to keep it to themselves. But the cicadas did sing. It was louder than I'd expected, and more arrived each day. They emerged and sang, followed by more, who emerged and sang, followed by more. They poured out of the ground for 2 weeks. Like buffet goers, some came early, most came on time, and some straggled in at the last minute. And this stretched the whole event out into 6 weeks of cicadas. And unlike the Dog Day cicadas that perch politely in their trees, Brood 5 flew around Madcap and Higgledy-Piggledy. They buzzed our heads. They sat on our shoulders and squealed in our ears, and they were particularly attracted to the riding lawnmower. Every time I mowed, they dive-bombed my face and clung to my shirt, hoping to woo the giant, sexy Craftsman tractor that purred in just the right timbre. Our dog ate and barfed them up on my bedroom carpet every evening. And I've got a strong stomach, but when I saw the contents, rotten exoskeletal husks sprinkled with decaying red eyeballs, I barfed. And then Benjamin's sympathy barfed in an act of intestinal solidarity. They were loud as hell. Periodical cicadas' decibel level combined with their sheer numbers make them one of the loudest sounds in nature, landing on the auditory offense scale somewhere between a troop of howler monkeys and the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa. The males call to females with their timbal organ, a ridged membrane on their abdomens that, when contracted, makes a click. The cicadas contracted up to 480 times per second, turning the single click into a continuous drone when it bounces off the human eardrum. An air sac in their abdomen amplifies the sound further, and they use their wings to direct it at the ladies. The chorus was deafening. By July, the human population of West Virginia's northern panhandle was overstimulated, irritable, and disgusted. We'd watched the long days of the summer solstice from our air-conditioned living rooms. We couldn't sit outside. Most of us had lost some hearing. Some people had eaten one, either by accident or on the heels of several Pabst Blue Ribbons. And a few unlucky souls had been molested by lecherous hemipterans while trimming quarter round on the driveway with a buzzing miter saw. I'm not saying that was me, but the whole thing started to stink. They started to stink too. As the cicada's life cycle wound down, their carcasses littered the ground and rotted in the midsummer humidity. The entire neighborhood became an homage to the inevitability of death and decay. The stains on my carpet, a semi-digested memento mori, even Stanley Steamer couldn't erase. So while the cinematic weeping of stringed instruments was more than capable of dissolving nature lovers into sniveling snot bubbles, the phlegm flowed a lot more freely in the beginning, before we'd plucked periodical cicadas from our bras, beards, and vodka tonics. And then they were gone. They passed on their genes and died, the only quiet thing they'd done as adults. The air cleared of song and scream and the ground of fetid funk. Newborn nymphs dropped out of the trees and burrowed back into the earth to wait out wars and presidents and our children's years at home. We heard birds again and katydids. We opened our doors and windows, fired up our barbecues, and invited friends to the deck. We said that was the worst. We've got to move before they come back. And then we forgot about them. That was probably their plan all along. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yo. Yeah, that happens.
Hey, Laura, repeat the question because people at home can't hear on the live stream.
Oh, no.
What was the, go ahead.
Can you say the question again? I met my kid's dad, and then my kid showed up, and we still had plans to go somewhere, but life kept intervening. More things kept happening that kept me here. My children got settled. They went to school. They met friends. I made friends. And then eventually, actually, it's odd. We had plans to move to Colorado because I wanted to live in bigger mountains. And it's very dry in Colorado, and I got a dry eye condition. And my doctor said, don't go to Colorado. So I went to go regroup, and in the meantime, I saw this ad that I mentioned for Chatham University's writing program. And so I got my master's, and I still could have left, but by then I was so entrenched and connected to the West Virginia writing community. I had met so many wonderful writers in West Virginia and in Pittsburgh, and I had a writing family, and I couldn't bear to leave them. And while all this was going on, I was also continuing to take my children around the state and investing in the state emotionally. And all of a sudden, one day, I just sat up and thought, I don't want to leave. This is my home. I'm happy here for the first time in my life. I don't want to go. This is where I find peace. And maybe that's something that comes, in middle age, or once you've had children, you're able to take the long view. But this is where I feel most at peace, and so I'm very happy to stay. Maybe not in like January, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Kind of related to that. The Ogden race, I had 3 of my granddaughters came to run. One from Alabama, one from Florida, and one from Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
When they were finished, the one from Kansas came in first in her division. They were thrilled to have run the hills in Wheeling. They thought it was beautiful. You had trees. You had just beautiful foliage, which they do not have where they live. So they can't wait to come back next year and run again.
Actually, I can relate to that, because as much as I didn't plan to stay in West Virginia when I came home after college, my last year of college, when I went to college, I was 18, and I went to school at the beach. There was a beach at my college. There were dolphins and manatees and, parrots outside my dorm, and I thought, oh my God, this is the best thing in the entire world. And for 2 years it was. And then I started to notice in Florida that there are no woods. Here, 360, there's woods everywhere. No matter where you are in West Virginia, you can stop your car and walk into the woods. And you can't do that in Florida. And they have woods, but the woods are full of mosquitoes and alligators and rattlesnakes, and it's not a friendly environment. And the vegetation in Florida is very scrubby by design, because that's just the way Florida is. It's a scrubby place. And I remember driving along in my car one day down the interstate toward Fort Myers, where my grandparents lived, and looking at this flat scrubland out the car window, and imagining that I was looking at our mountains in June when they're covered with that emerald green soft carpet. And I kind of went like this along the window. And of course, John Denver then happened to come on the radio at that exact moment, which is, absolutely true. But that was when I started thinking, man, I miss the woods, and I miss the mountains, and why the hell is this place so flat? And so even though I didn't intend to stay, by the time I came back, I was tired of Florida. West Virginia is, like I said, it's in our DNA and it's in our bones, and it's hard to shake that. So for the same reason, there's an essay in the book actually about how I hate flat things, and how flat things freak me out, and how so many West Virginians feel the same way. We feel almost exposed when we're in flat places. Like anything could get you. It could be a tornado or a Godzilla or something. We feel exposed. And if we can only see the sun between like 11:45 and 12:15, we are good. Like, we are tucked into our hollow, and we're safe. So I can relate to that.
I loved your story. We almost had the exact same experience. My wife and I were married here in 1981. I'm also a Lindsley graduate, by the way. And we decided back then, we're just going to start our lives together in a totally different place. We ended up in Santa Barbara, California, which is absolutely gorgeous. We were nestled between the ocean and the mountains behind us. We had 4 incredible years out there. But when our daughter was born out there, we thought, we probably ought to get back to someplace a little more sensible. Mm-hmm. So we decided to move back east, but we stopped over in West Virginia for about a couple months. That was 40 years ago.
Right.
So again, we found West Virginia was the place to raise a family.
Yeah.
And you seem like you appreciate it more when you go away and then come back.
Yeah.
And just love it here. This is home.
Yeah, it is. It just happens. Yeah. I don't think we can ever really shake it. And like I said, I have many friends who will never live back here, but they still go right to DeCarlo's, and
That's right.
they always post on Instagram the, back home and the Dub V, or, almost heaven, or that kind of thing. It's part of who we are.
That's
So,
right. Thank you.
yep.
Any other questions?
Well, thanks, everybody. I've got a few books if anybody wants one. Thanks for having me.